images of white women with a sea of black faces, of black children's faces, and this person either trying to teach lessons or provide some kind of assistance is also very common these days, and it's part of that discourse of helpless people waiting for salvation that comes from outside.
I think using children in commercials to attract volunteers is potentially problematic. Children, and particularly young, vulnerable, suffering children, have long been used to motivate people to contribute towards charities, to give up their time, their money, and so on. And there's a clear reason for that. Pictures of suffering children evoke an emotional reaction in all of us, and we want to do something to help them. The problem with that is that it can promote negative stereotypes of children. That the people who see these commercials see these children as vulnerable, helpless, passive, rather than as active, resourceful, resilient, which is at least as true of children.
You know, it's not a question of the good guys and the bad guys it's almost like it's a structural thing. And even if you were the good guys, you'll have to negotiate in ways that still allowed you to access funding. The major thrust of colonial enterprises was to make sure that so-called native populations were pacified. That was the word for it. It wasn't to ensure that native populations engaged with the colonialists in solving their problems. It was a question of the colonial powers saying, these are your problems, these are the ways in which you should sort these problems out. And that basically has continued. So there's almost like a kind of grammar for representing Africa that gets passed on from generation to generation.
In South Africa, we've had a flood of what we call volunteer tourism. So you get companies who are making a lot of money by bringing young people over to Cape Town, and it's just a money-making skill. And I think they're abusing the real concern and empathy and wanting to make a difference that these young people have. And they are just being exploited. And then we don't want to be part of that exploitation. We're working with children who have attachment disorders and have been traumatized and neglected and abused and really battle with relationships. So now we're having quite inappropriate interactions happening. So you'll get a young 16-year-old girl wearing a very tight miniskirt, wanting to come and work with a guy who's really battling to get his life together, and then they disappear.
Okay, I'm a residential social worker, and my job is basically to receive children from the external social workers, because we work as two different parties. They remove children from their homes depending on what circumstances it is. Usually it's neglect and abuse.
I am Lydia. Surname is Matsiba. I stay in Khayelitsha, Side B. I'm working at Masikine for 25 years now. Every volunteer who came here, they are attracted to them, yes. They love the volunteers.
Yes, they are always happy because volunteers come with sweets.
Yesterday they was out with the children, and then they will treat them there, give them a snack and lunch and everything.
Most children during the first couple of years of life form an attachment or a close emotional bond to one or a few specific people who care for them regularly. And most children form a secure attachment to their caregiver or caregivers, which means that they feel confident when that person is around. They use them as what we call a secure base, and they're happy to explore the environment. They tend to get a bit upset if the caregiver leaves them, but when she comes back into the room, they're easily comforted, and it's no big deal. Some children, though, form what we call insecure attachments to their caregivers, and these can take different forms. Some children respond by withdrawing or avoiding the caregiver when she comes back after having left them. Others are very anxious, they become clingy, overly dependent, but if their caregiver leaves the room and then comes back, they seem angry at her for having left them. Others show what we call a disorganized attachment, which is some combination of the two.
The behavior that comes with attachment is quite serious, and it leads to a good example would be of their behavior. They'll break a window when they're angry. Now you go, why are they breaking a window? And then if you know attachment disorder, you start to understand that for them, because they haven't got that emotional connection with anybody, material stuff is very important to them. And they think material things are very important to you as well.
If a volunteer comes for a limited period of time and forms a close, loving relationship with one or a few individual children, when that volunteer then leaves, it's likely to be very distressing for the child. And if the child has repeated experiences of volunteers coming, forming a close relationship, and then the person going and they never see them again, they may ultimately learn that it's not worth trying to love people, because anytime I love somebody, they abandon me, they go away.
The babies, they actually get attached to the volunteers. Then the older ones, it's a normal thing. People go and people come, so you don't really see how it's affecting them. But with the babies, they actually have certain volunteers that they really love. When they see them, they actually cry. So it's a bit difficult. The good thing is, good to the child, that they were that specific someone who's always cuddling them, doing whatever they want. But the bad thing is when they leave. What will happen to that child? They will forever be sad.
Like one of them actually just started to stand today. That was new. We came back after our days off. He started to stand. He could stand for at least 15 seconds now, which is really good. So I want to see him walk. I want to see him talk. So stuff like that. I feel very attached, especially to the little one that is considered my kid. But the other ones as well, they're all well behaved. Some of the older ones, they like to come to me a lot. Like that one. They call him, he has a really big head, so I joke around with him. I call him Big Head.
They have their favorites. Everyone has got their specific person that they say, okay, this one, maybe they identify them as their parents or something. I'm not really sure what happens in their mind, but they actually get attached to one of the volunteers. Let's say there are 3. There's one person that a certain child loves more than anyone else.
Love to stay, but there'll be some time where we have to say goodbye anyways, right? So we'll be sad. It'll be a sad day. I'm not really looking forward to that day, but it's gonna come. They're young. I just hope if they cry, I'll probably cry.
My feeling is that if a volunteer is only able to be in the child's life for a limited period of time, it's probably better for that child ultimately if the volunteer maintains a certain degree of emotional distance. So by all means, come in, provide children or group of children with stimulating activities, but don't make them emotionally dependent on you, because it's going to be too tough on them when you leave. Perhaps instead you can help the people who are going to be around when you leave to form those close relationships with the children, which might involve doing other tasks to leave them more time to interact with the children, or giving them skills that you have, teaching them how to interact with the children in a way that is more stimulating or better meets the child's needs.
So volunteers are not allowed to be left unsupervised with the children. If they are a professional, like say a psychologist, and they have been given a certain task to work with the child, that would need to be agreement signed as to what can and cannot be done. But our thing is, a lot of volunteers come and they work with the children, right? And then they go away and they take their skills with them. And the children are left, what now? Our whole emphasis is on, please, the volunteers are going to come, empower our staff, empower the organization with your time and your skills, so that when you go, you've left a legacy rather than a vacuum.
I love the children very much. I've seen a lot of children coming and going out. The saddest of all is when they leave the place. I usually come to this room when the children leave. I don't want to be there because it's too sad. There was one volunteer. She used to say, yes, you people are working for the children's home, with the children's, but you are the people who raise the children. You know, you are the mothers of the children. You cook for them, you clean them, you feed them. So you people are the most important people of all. God gave the children to us with a purpose. Maybe one day, one of our children will be a teacher, a doctor, you know, so or even a president.